Hey all, thank you again for joining today's webinar on the biggest drone mapping pitfalls and how to avoid them. We're going to be joined today by guest speaker Dan Veres, drone expert at Identified Technologies. If you have any questions for me, for him, at any point throughout the webinar, you can submit questions. Here's how. You just click the arrow that you see in the box and then fill in your question and hit enter, and we will take them as they come. We'll also have a designated Q&A section at the end, but feel free to ask at any point. For the agenda, we're going to go through just some basics about drone technology, how drones are benefiting different industries, go through the most common drone mapping pitfalls and how to avoid them. We have a special limited time offer just for live attendees, and then we'll get to the audience Q&A. So for just general commercial drone basics, we've had RC planes and helicopters for decades. So why is it that there's this sudden massive interest in drone technology? Well, this was the common user experience for RC planes and helicopters. They're fun, they're made of paper, balsa wood, cardboard. You can fly them around for a few minutes, but pretty quickly a gust of wind's going to take them, flip them, crash them. And they were toys, not tools. You couldn't collect data. They weren't automated. They weren't a way to get things done. So what changed? Why do we have this sudden massive interest in drones today? It's a combination of government and private sector innovation. You got flight controllers from NASA, GPS from the US Navy, miniaturized sensors, accelerometers, and gyroscopes that many of us have in our smartphones, high resolution, low power consumption digital cameras like GoPros, and all those combined with progress in model aircraft and battery lives are what make the modern drone that we know and we love possible. And a lot of people ask, all right, I want a drone. What kind of drone do I need? And I can virtually guarantee that your perfect drone solution is out there waiting for you. But no one single drone is perfect for every application. Just like your needs, if you have a family of 6 and you're car shopping, you're probably going to want a minivan, maybe some big SUV. If you're flying solo and you just want maybe like a sexy little sports car, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. You just need a different application for the job. So for drones, you can spend about $100 million if you want to get a Global Hawk from Northrop Grumman. Weighs about 32,000 pounds, can fly for 28 hours. And at the other end of the spectrum, DJI is a fantastic company. They make all different levels, including pretty basic consumer drones, if that's what you're in the market for. And for $1,000, if you just want to take some basic photos and video, a Phantom Vision is an excellent choice. And then you have everything in between. We're seeing drones used for a wide variety of applications, everything from real estate, sports, movies, and TV commercials, and companies like Amazon are experimenting with them for deliveries. Really anything where you're just trying to get a sensor in the air gathering data, where traditionally you would have had to get a plane or a helicopter, pay for the jet fuel, pay for the pilot. Now it's just a much more straightforward process, much lower cost, and can really be done on demand and in real time. So how are drones benefiting your industry? Well, if you're in mining, we're seeing drones used to capture real-time mine planning data, see how progress is being made, track the efficiency and impact of blasts, track stockpiles, look for safety issues in shelves. For construction, anything where you're moving, lots of earth, any kind of horizontal construction, highways, site preparation. It's great to see exactly where you are, exactly how much progress has been made instead of just counting trucks that may be half full. For oil and gas, obviously with regulatory requirements, you have to track well pads, impoundment ponds, pipelines, not just the construction, but sort of the long-term maintenance. In a lot of cases, you may have to be required to every 2 weeks go through the right-of-ways by pipelines and make sure that they're clear and being maintained. So instead of doing all that by hand or on foot, Now there's a much faster, safer, more automated way to do it. It's being used in agriculture to see what areas may need more pesticide, more fertilizer, more water. Um, Landfills to not only for the construction of the landfill, but to make sure that they're being filled right up to the maximum point without exceeding it. So you're not wasting any space, you're optimizing it without causing any negative environmental impact. And then for engineering companies or surveying companies, they're using drones the same way that they've used any kind of survey equipment. They're capturing data. Now they're just doing it more quickly, more safely. So within all these different spaces, why is it that so often projects run late or over budget? And the answer is simple. And if I have any project managers joining on the webinar today, I think this will hit pretty close to home. Every day, project managers are asked to do the impossible. They go to war with a mountain of paperwork. They have to communicate with their contractors, their leadership, their customers, while having perfect visibility to every change on every massive job site all simultaneously. It's unfortunately an impossible job. You can't be three places at once, and sometimes something has to give. I've been on job sites that were 400, 500 acres where you can't even see from one end to the other. And McKinsey said that construction is the world's second largest industry after agriculture. It's worth $8 trillion a year, but the typical commercial construction project actually runs 80% over budget and 20 months behind schedule. That's according to McKinsey. So about 3 trillion of that 8 trillion gets lost in a cascade of change orders, rework, and schedule slips. And that's because you can't track these 100 or 200 or 500 acre sites and all the changes that happen just the way we've been doing it. And that's rolled up paper blueprints, the same way we were tracking it 20 years ago. Managers walking the site with clipboards, taking notes and pictures. All stakeholders having to actually physically come out to the job site to check progress. We just talked to an architecture firm in Pittsburgh, where we're based, that every week someone was flying out to the West Coast where the project was to check in on progress and flying back. And the reason that traditionally aerial overhead data has only been rarely captured is due to the large costs and large delays. It's never been affordable until now. And that lack of data, that lack of transparency has unfortunately meant that it's been impossible to make fast, informed decisions because the managers didn't have the consistent, complete site visibility that they needed. That's resulted in inefficiency because expensive contractors and rental equipment often go unused due to bottlenecks that could have been prevented with better information. It led to and leads to project delays, where you're waiting for customers to get out to the site to approve portions of work and release funds for the next section. You're just waiting on your hands. You'd like to get the work done, but you don't have approval. It leads to low profits because when projects go over budget or require rework, it often comes directly out of the company's profits. And unfortunately, it can lead to lost customers because when customers are disappointed, they may not use you again, they may stop mid-project, or God forbid, they may even file lawsuits. So why drones? How do they help? They give you that job site visibility. You're finally able to capture accurate data in minutes instead of months. The data is accurate. The data is captured automatically at the push of a button. It's near real time, and it's completely secure. So who are we? Identified Technologies offers an all-in-one drone mapping solution that improves job site transparency and profitability. We're trusted by industrial leaders, Fortune 500 companies in energy, excavation, mining, and engineering. They use us because outdated methods are slow, inaccurate, dangerous, and costly. They use our integrated job site production tracking and optimization technology, and we are proudly headquartered in Pittsburgh, PA, serving clients across North America. We've served clients including Casella, iPlus Icon, Kokosing, SSR, Vulcan, and you can read articles about us in ENR, Construction Executive, Built Worlds, and more. So what kind of data do we offer? What kind of insights, and why is it useful? Well, we automate the advanced mapping and tracking of job sites. So you're not just going to get some photos or some video. We're actually going to give you full three-dimensional analysis. You can get things like volumetric analysis. Maybe you want to see what volumes you have in your stockpiles. Maybe you want to see how much earth you've moved and how far you still have to go. We have Truck IQ for actually tracking your cycle time, your load time, and improving your efficiency. We offer the same contour maps that you're used to, just collected, again, more quickly, more efficiently. You can get as-built versus as-planned blueprint overlays, so you can, both for your own sake and the sake of your clients, ensure that all the work being done is being done to spec. And then we also have change detection technology and cut fill tracking. So that gives you basically a heat map showing how your job site is shifting, how far you still have to go, and a chart so you can see your progress trends, and if things are dropping off, intervene, and also see to ensure that you're going on track, right? Let's say that you're moving 10,000 yards of earth a day, and you have 100,000 total to move, but you only have 3 days left to do it. You know, all right, we got to bring in more equipment, more people if we want to hit our deadline. And you're able to securely share data and export it in all major file formats. So nothing is locked in. You can pull it out for post-processing, or if you ever want to use another solution. So how are we different than traditional alternatives? Well, you have aerial surveys by plane or helicopter. Those usually cost from $10,000 to $20,000 per site. They're fast once they actually get out on the site. They may gather the data in a few hours, but you're often looking at several weeks to a month to book the flight, and then maybe 1 to 2 months for post-processing after. So from the time you actually request the survey till you actually get the data back, easily looking at 2 to 3 months. For a manned survey team, they can usually come out to the site faster, maybe a week after you order it. But unfortunately, there, it takes longer because they're gathering the data by hand. So for a job site, it's not uncommon to take 2 to 4 weeks to gather that data once they're out on the site, and then they need time to process it. So again, you're looking around that 2-month point. What's unique about our subscription drone service is you can be gathering data at the push of a button as frequently as you want. That can be annually, but it could be quarterly, it could be monthly. Most of our clients do it multiple times a week. So they're not getting old data, they're getting virtually real-time updates. They get unlimited updates with a low-cost monthly subscription, so they don't pay anything more for that frequency. It takes around 9 or 10 minutes to gather the data for a 100-acre job site on average, and you're going to get that data back in a couple hours. So you fly that morning, you're going to have that data back before you leave the office. Now, another option is, instead of using a traditional survey team, instead of using a plane or a helicopter, you can DIY your own solution. And if you want to go that route, no matter what you do, these are the steps that you will need to follow. You'll need to take your own FAA regulations and training in-house. You're going to need to hire, certify, train drone pilots to do the work. You're going to need the software, the hardware, the processing, the data storage, the data management and analytics for these files. It's not uncommon to have a 4 or 5 gigabyte file for a job site because of the level of detail in the data. So they're not things that you'll necessarily want to just email around, especially if you want to have your whole office collaborating and using them as one central point of record. You'll either need to take on the risk of operating it, or hopefully get insurance for it, and then regardless of anything being damaged or anyone being injured, still if a drone goes down, you could be looking at $50,000 per crash just to repair or replace it. And the standard drone mapping process, if you're doing it internally, is you'll need a KML with the map perimeter. That's like similar to a Google map. You'll lay the ground control points. You'll create and upload your flight plan, fly the drone, geotag the data, transfer the data, process the data, store and manage the data, and finally, you can analyze and collaborate on that data. What's pretty extraordinary about the solution that we offer with Identified Technologies is with us, we've taken out all the tedious, unnecessary steps and automated them. So you just select your flight plan on the included tablet. The drone flies at the push of a button. You're not sitting there with joysticks. It flies the whole job site in a lawnmower pattern by itself, takes itself off, captures the data, comes back, lands itself. The data is automatically processed in the cloud, and boom, you can access and analyze your job site data and collaborate with your team. And thank you for sticking with me. This gets us to the meat of today's presentation, the biggest drone mapping pitfalls and how to avoid them. So the number one mistake to make with drone mapping in 2018 is not using drone mapping. And it surprises me, but a lot of people still are doing things the same way they did 20 years ago. And to me, that's like trying to do your job without email, without a cell phone, right? I mean, it's just, why not take advantage of the modern tools we have? But some people aren't. So as we've discussed, drones can do a lot to help with team productivity, project visibility, safety, reduce costs. So the first mistake not to make is not to take advantage of all that drones have to offer. Mistake number two is, yes, they're using drones, but they're not doing it to their full potential. So as we discussed, a lot of people think all you can do with drones is get some photos, right? You go to Walmart, you get that $500 just consumer level glorified toy drone. You take it out to Aunt Sally's nephew's bar mitzvah, and you're snapping some pictures in the backyard, you're having fun, but that's not really making use of it as the tool that it can be. So with our solution, again, you're looking at contour maps, as-built versus as-planned, change detection technology, volumetric analysis, getting a real handle on what your cost per unit is, whether that's cubic yard of earth moved or acre cleared. What that's going to do is inform much more educated bidding, empowering much more profitable bidding moving forward. It also gives you a database and an archive. So instead of taking decades to get a feel for how expensive things are, how long things takes, now you can just see right in your record, this was a job, this was how much it cost us, and these were the units that we achieved. And you can do that also for different types of jobs. Maybe, the rock in Kentucky costs more to move than the native rock in PA, and this gives you a good feel for that. Ground control points are really, really useful for drone mapping. Now, we offer PPK solutions, so there are ways to minimize the number of ground control points, but even with PPK or RTK, you're still going to get better results if you lay a couple of ground control points initially. What they basically do is calibrate and tighten up the data, and you can get down to a tenth of a foot survey grade data as long as you just lay a few of these. So make sure, if you want accurate data that that you can live and die by, that you are taking the time to lay ground control points. We offer best practices on what they are, how to do that. It doesn't have to be any more than a spray painted X on the ground at the job site, but it is important to take advantage of that. And once they're set in place, you can actually use the exact same ground control points through the life of the project. If it's a massive, let's say, highway excavation, like where you're knocking through a mountain and it's going to take 3 or 4 years, you lay the ground control points once, day one, you can use them through the entire life of the project. So one thing you want to avoid is flying without insurance. Without insurance, the drone owner will always be at risk. You're going to be liable for any injuries, property damage, equipment malfunctions. So to prevent serious legal trouble, it's worth paying for some kind of liability insurance. That's something that we assist with, so you're risk-free if an accident or malfunction were to occur. And we also take care of all the hardware maintenance, all the software upgrades, and if something does happen, let's say your drone malfunctions, it doesn't want to take off, that's on us. We're gonna express overnight ship you a new drone for no added charge, um, or so you're not left just kind of sitting on your hands, waiting for someone to fix it. It is extremely important to follow FAA laws and regulations. This should go without saying, but a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't really need to get my certification. Um, it's a pain. No one's going to know that I'm not flying." But the truth is, if you are operating a drone commercially, it is not if the FAA is going to come knocking on your door to see your paperwork. It's only when. And you can look it up. A company called Skypan International, a Chicago-based drone operator, was recently fined $1.9 million by the FAA for flying without the agency's permission, without the proper certification. So you don't want that. You have much better things to do with $1.9 million. You want to get certified. And that's also something that we help with. The FAA Part 107 is a certification for small drone commercial use. Um, our chief pilot, our VP of Aviation, John Little, has about 2 decades of experience with flight training and regulations, and we give you all the training material, all the guidance, and usually with a couple hours of studying, whoever's going to be operating the drone is ready to go. As we discussed, you're literally just there pushing the start button on the drone and it'll operate itself, but you still need to know some basic safety requirements just to make sure you're not going to be flying it next to an airport, next to a preschool, or at night where you can't have good visibility on the drone. So that all of those are aspects that are included with our service. Now, you want to make sure that whatever drone solution you choose is going to scale to your needs. Now, if you only have one job site and that's all you're ever going to have, that's not a concern. But most people we talk to are either larger organizations currently or aspire to someday be, and they want to plan for solutions that will grow with them. So many drone services out there, they charge for every additional site and they don't really scale for your needs. Or they charge dramatically more for every additional drone, whereas our drone costs are just pure pass-through. So make sure that you're being cost effective when you're choosing a solution, that the pricing structure is something that makes sense for your scale, and that they're really going to grow for your needs. Ideally, to make the most of drones and drone mapping data, it's not something that you're just going to use on one job site or even for just one department. They're going to create a central point of record for your entire organization. So your accounting, your finance, your operations, your GIS are all on the same page. They know exactly where the job site is, exactly how it's progressing, and you have one central point of record moving forward. So that push for centralization and job site digitalization is really the future of how construction and industrial operations are going to be managed. Sometimes, unfortunately, people are front loading their capital expenses. What I mean by that is, if they're going to do this internally, they may be spending $500,000 in hardware, software, drones, uh, legal bills, overpriced consultants, just bringing all these different costs in that are going to hit your bank account all at once up front, get you kind of pot committed before you even decide, is this really a good business decision? Is this solution that we're hacking together actually what's going to meet our needs? In general, paying as you go in installments is a safer route. It's less intimidating. It's a way to try out drone mapping without committing yourself to a solution that may not work. So what we usually advise with a service like us, it's a subscription-based service. So if you're using it and at the end of the first year, you're not happy, you're not thrilled, you're not getting value out of it, you discontinue the service. You're done. You haven't put $500,000 or more into building out this huge infrastructure department. You just pay as you go for as long as you're getting value. That also puts the responsibility on us. If you're not happy, if you're not getting what you need from it, it's on us to fix it. That's not your responsibility. That's our responsibility to keep you happy. Whatever service you choose, or even if you want to build it out internally, make sure you can export your data. So all these different exports and more that you see, all these different formats are formats that we support. You can pull any of these out from our identified technologies SiteIQ software. Unfortunately, a lot of competitors do not offer that. They want to lock you in to their service. They want to ensure that once you go with them, you can't leave, that you're trapped. Not only is that frustrating if you're otherwise not happy, but it also means that if there's anything you want to do in post-processing or anything you want to share with other departments, you can't do it. So make sure whatever decision you choose that they do offer all the exports that you require for post-processing and to be able to leave if you in fact are not satisfied with their service. And the last one is, and unfortunately this is a common one, it's losing accountability with multiple points of failure. What I mean by that is if you're working with different vendors to create your own in-house solution, things can get really complicated. Maybe you have a drone from one company and you also have software analysis from another company and you have hardware from another company. So once something goes wrong, and it will, when the data isn't quite what you wanted it to be, when it just spits out, gets an error, and just doesn't give you what you need, there's often a situation where everyone's pointing fingers at everyone else. And they're saying, well, it wasn't our fault. It's obviously the software guy saying it's a hardware issue. The drone guy saying it's a software issue. And none of that is actually getting you the data that you need to operate your business and make smart decisions. So what you ideally want is a solution with one point of failure. We like to say one neck to wring. And again, it's on us. If there's ever an issue, we are gonna get your data working. We are gonna troubleshoot for you. We are gonna ensure that you're satisfied. Otherwise, you're not gonna be a customer. So just having that one point of failure does have a real advantage. People sleep better at night knowing that we have their back. So in terms of what does the onboarding process look like, if this sounds good, I'm just gonna talk you through it briefly. You sit down with our head of client success. They're gonna find out what your goals are as an organization, what you're trying to achieve, train you to get ready for that, walk you through your first flights, talk you through the insights, how to interpret our reports, and help you actually integrate that into your standard operating procedures. You're gonna get best-in-class support. If you do ever need to do any troubleshooting, if something doesn't go quite right, you're gonna have a whole tech team, our customer success manager, our CEO, if that's what you need, all behind you to make sure that it gets fixed quickly, gets fixed right, and that you're getting what you need from it. We also have a full online support center. So if it's 3 a.m. and you want to study for your Part 107, you want to read up on best practices for laying ground control points, all that data is always there 24/7 with us. With that customer success team, they're not just there if something goes wrong. They're actually going to be delivering quarterly check-ins with you for as long as you're with us. So that means not only are they there for the initial training, but once a quarter, you're going to do a quick call, make sure that you're taking advantage of our newest, latest, and greatest upgrades and updates. Find out if your goals as an organization have changed and how we can help adjust your process to take advantage of that. And also, if you have requests, and a lot of our most valuable, most used features have come out this way, we want to hear them. And we can relay that to our product team to build those out and make sure that you're getting your needs met as the technology continues to evolve. So customers use us to help maximize their new bids won, their jobs completed per year, their profitability, their stakeholder collaboration, and their client satisfaction. And in doing that, they minimize overwork, rework, delays, injuries, setup time, costs, and problems. So if you want to win more bids, track and increase profitability, increase and speed up your quality assurance, and help improve your client satisfaction and retention, we would love to talk. I'm going to put a link up for a drone mapping demo in the chat box. If this sounds good to you, feel free to sign up. You can get a free demo to see our technology in action. Also going to put up a link. This is just a free offer for live attendees. You can fill out a couple of questions, should take maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and you can win a chance at a free month of automatic drone mapping with Identified Technologies. So with that, I'd like to open up the audience Q&A. Nothing's off limits. You can ask about applications, tech specs, FAA regulations. If we don't know the answer, we'll try to get back to you with someone who does. In terms of how to ask those questions, you're going to click the arrow, then enter it in the questions box here. I'll give a few minutes for the questions to come in. You have the enormous pleasure of speaking with Dan Verez, drone expert at Identified Technologies. And I can see some questions are already starting to pour in, which is great to see. All right, so Dan, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to start out by, while other questions are pouring in, I want to ask one that comes up a lot, which is there's a lot of potential applications for drones. We talked about film, delivery, bridge inspections. So why have we chosen to emphasize mapping job sites specifically?
Thanks, Barry. And real quick, just want to say thanks to everyone for joining today. This is my life. This is my job. It's been an exciting just to see how the drone's been embraced in this industry from the start. And, the nice thing is we entered this industry very early, almost at a time when there were, to put it in a phrase, so many cookie jars to dip our hands into. And at that start, it was a little bit tempting to try to grab all the cookies. It was tempting to try film. It was tempting to try roof inspections, insurance. It was tempting to try to be the next Amazon of the sky and test our business with delivery. But with a technology like drones, where there's 1,000,001 applications, it was important for us to focus on one area at a time and bring the best product to that market, to that area. And very early on, it became clear to us we wanted to utilize drones on industrial job sites. And a couple reasons. I mean, many of these sites are massive, sometimes hundreds of acres. There's typically less FAA restrictions on these types of projects, such as not having to worry about flying over non-participants or live traffic. And really, most importantly, there's so many great people in these industries willing to embrace the new technology. And for us, that was everything we needed. Rather than get distracted with other industries, spread our attention elsewhere, focus on other drone applications. Again, our goal from the start has been to bring the best technology and service to industrial job sites. And I think if you ask any of our customers, they'll tell you that that's exactly what we do.
Perfect, Dan, thank you. We hear more and more about labor shortages in the construction space and how hard it can be to find good people. So how does drone mapping impact the number of jobs that can be taken on without increasing headcount?
Yeah, so I'll answer this a couple ways. A classic dilemma we hear, especially from a number of our survey partners, is, Dan, how do I grow my business without adding to payroll, hiring new heads, hiring new people? And I think very quickly they realize with the drone, they can maximize the production of their existing survey crews, of their existing workers, without having to add to that payroll and hire more people, train new people, because that's what the drone brings to the table. I mean, you have a mini helicopter almost in the back of your pickup truck that you can take out, fly at will, capture 100 acres worth of data in 10 minutes. And now we see scenarios where, hey, if you've got 10, 15 job sites that might have taken you 1 to 2 weeks or longer to map every single one of those sites. With the drone, you can easily knock off, 5 of those in a day, 10 of those in a day. And just that aspect alone, we've seen a lot of cases such as that where, again, faced with the choice, do I invest into new technology or do I go through the hiring process to add more heads? The new technology wins out more often than not. Now, the other area we've seen, and especially in construction, is with the drone and being able to capture survey grade data on these job sites, especially before the project even starts. It really helps with project planning as well. And how many times do we start a project and halfway through we realize we need more help? We realize we need more people on this project, people on this site, and that's just another area. You fly the drone at the very start, you capture an accurate map of how much dirt you need to move, you do your project planning, you come up with your timeline, and hopefully there won't be any cases of needing to call in more heads, hire more people, especially with these labor shortages we have seen in the industry.
Dan, as a follow-on to that, how does drone mapping impact cash flow? What impact does that seem to have for our customers?
Classic question. Yeah. So cash flow, it's huge. Every business sees it. Every business faces it. You have a project, and whether you get paid that lump sum or whether you're getting paid $1 per yard, the goal is always to collect that cash as quickly as possible, but at the same time to bill for the amount of work you've actually done. And again, where the drone immediately fits in all this, you don't need to hire a survey crew to come out every billing period. You don't need to guess those earthwork quantities. I mean, it really is a case where your superintendent, your foreman, somebody who's already at the job site can unpack this thing, send it up in the air, capture a quick map on a Friday, send it to the billing team the next day, and then they know exactly what those quantities that were moved that week, that month, that day even. And we've just seen such an incredible uptick with how companies handle these projects now, given access to the billing team and being able to, send a bill to the customer. And now it's not hesitant. It's not, oh my gosh, am I billing too much? Am I billing too little? Am I, screwing myself over 3-6 months from now? It's, hey, I did this amount of work. This is what we're owed, and I can handle my project better, both in terms of progress and in terms of cash.
How does being able to track your real progress in time and your real costs associated with that progress help with smarter bidding?
So a huge use case, almost every project I'd say, is there will be a drone flight done, whether before you win the bid or especially after, just to verify those quantities. And again, whether it's you want to track for that labor shortage scenario we talked about, you want to understand how much earth you're moving, you want to understand, hey, was my bid accurate or was it inaccurate? That's going to be your first use case. And again, when you can capture 100 acres in 10 minutes, there's really no excuse not to go out to that job site on day one and get an accurate picture of what this job's going to entail. And it's not a case of you have to send out the surveyor, you've got to drive the whole thing, walk the whole thing, shoot a point every 20, 25 feet. Getting a little bit more nitty gritty here, but the drone will actually capture you a point every couple inches if you need something that dense. And we've seen incredible power with that, being able to take that accurate info from the drone, compare it to your final grade model, compare it to your original surface, see how those two surfaces match up. Again, there's a huge benefit to being able to take that drone out from day one and actually understand from day one what my project's going to entail, how much dirt I'm going to move, what this project's going to look like over time.
The question came up, what factors go into achieving that 1/10 of a foot accuracy? So what different things help improve the accuracy that we could offer? And I guess what would potentially negatively impact that if it's not done right on the operation side?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different items that can come into play with accuracy, and really every job site's going to be specific and a little bit different than another. Now your classic completely flat, 50 acres, that one's going to be relatively easy. If you're not using any sort of PPK or RTK technology, you might lay a few ground control points in each of the corners, fly that thing, and you'll get a very, very accurate service. Now, you and I both know, those 50-acre completely flat job sites are far and few in between. Almost every job site is going to have some sort of elevation on it, some sort of obstacles, and they're definitely not going to be a complete perfect square. So when it comes to flight planning, if you're using ground control points, it's not just how many ground control points you use, it's that ground control point placement. It's almost more important than the number of ground control points. That comes into play to a huge effect in terms of data accuracy and precision. And even with PPK and RTK technologies, where you take off from, the elevations you fly those drones at, what type of camera you're using. I mean, there's 101 different factors that come into play when it comes to drone accuracy and precision. I mean, from the start, one of the reasons we've developed our business as it is, not necessarily your vendor, but really your technology partner, is so that we could provide that flight services aspect. Every time you fly, our VP of Aviation, our flight services team will take a look at your site. They'll come up with a ground control point plan if you need it. They can tell you, hey, here's the elevation you should fly at. Here's the number of flights you should split that site up to if it's a rather big site. Just because at the end of the day, there's no point in using drone technology if it's not going to get you the type and the accuracy of the data you need. And what you put into before that flight is as important, if not more important, to the flight itself.
I think a good related question is, how does wind affect that? Can the drone still operate in windy conditions, and with sort of what weather limitations should we be aware of?
Yeah, excellent question. And I'll say this, what I tell you today might not be the case a year from now. The other thing we've seen with this technology is it's improving by the day. The minute you buy one of these drones, it's almost out of date just because battery life's getting better, the propellers are getting stronger, etc. Now, I'll share a little story just from my experience. One of the first drone flights I did was up north in Wisconsin in the middle of December. And don't make fun of me for choosing to go out there, but it was. I always tell guys, hey, if I can fly on that perfect 70-degree day, great. But what happens when it's negative 13 degrees, negative 20 with the wind chill, and I've got 30-mile-per-hour winds? That's really a true test of, hey, how do these things work? And the big thing with the drone is you always want to take that weather into consideration. You might create a smaller flight plan with those 20, 30-degree winds because the battery life's not going to last as long. If I'm flying in cold weather like that, I'll use some battery heaters to keep my batteries warm. I'll keep them on the dashboard in the truck until I'm actually ready to fly with the heat on so they stay nice and warm. But it's always just being cognizant of your environment, is being aware of what the weather conditions are, and not being stupid with the technology. If I know my batteries are cold, if I know, if there's a monsoon outside and it's pouring rain, I'm going to pack the thing up and I'm going to save it for a different day. There's no use risking my hardware. There's no risk putting people in danger because I want to get the flight done that day. It's always important to be cognizant of weather, but at the same time, if you take those necessary steps, take a little planning into action, you can certainly fly when there's wind, when it's cold out, etc.
What I usually tell people is, if you would send a person out in it, you can probably send a drone out in it. If you would not send a person out in it, you probably shouldn't send a drone out in it. So, you probably don't want to head out there in the middle of a blizzard, in the middle of a tornado, but if staff can safely operate there, the drone probably can too.
Absolutely.
Um, we got some really good questions on LiDAR, how our technology how the accuracy compares, how it compares for uh, penetrating vegetation, and then kind of within that, if in some cases it makes sense to do drones for a large section of the job site, but maybe still have some done by hand under tree cover.
Yeah, LiDAR, it's exciting. It's great technology. Where we're at today with the technology, the only limitation with LiDAR is it's expensive and it's heavy. So you definitely need a very specific drone to not just carry the LiDAR, but to be able to support that LiDAR equipment for a long flight period. And again, typically the units we've seen in the industry with LiDAR technology are significantly more expensive than the other options that are out there. Again, I'll go back to my last point. We are still relatively young with drone technology, and we are seeing, we're already at a point where LiDAR is being utilized with drones. And I think in the future, it's going to be affordable and available to everyone. And in terms of what it brings to the table, that point about being able to shoot through vegetation is exactly right. I mean, especially at the start of the project, a lot of these projects haven't been cleared. They have trees on them, they have brush on them. And that's honestly the best use cases for LiDAR is being able to shoot those sites before they've been cleared. But just from what we've seen on the marketplace, still relatively expensive compared to other options, and it is heavier equipment to upload on the drone.
Often what we'll see is maybe 90% of the job can be done using drones. And then that last 10% where there is heavy vegetation, maybe that data is still collected by hand, but it still is dramatically less time consuming than having to do the entire job site by hand. Dan, can you speak to when you're having conversations with executive leadership at these companies, how their needs and what they get excited about differs versus your conversations with the more operational workers?
Sure. So, well, I guess if any of my executives are still out on the site, climbing to the top of piles, shooting the points, this applies to you as well. But I think for the most part, what I'm going to say first is going to apply to, those guys out in the field, those guys getting their boots dirty every day. Anybody who, let's say, has broken a leg or twisted an ankle trying to climb to the top of a pile. Because number one, first and foremost, that's going to be your lifesaver with the drone. You stand from a safe spot, safe location the whole time, and the drone does all the work for you. It's up in the air by itself. It flies that entire site by itself. It'll land right back where it took off from. And, I always say at the end of the day, if it saves you just one accident, one injury, the technology is worth it. Because the last thing we want to see is that number on the chalkboard, days since the last injury, getting erased and you have to start from zero again. That's the last thing anybody wants to see. And I think just in terms of what the drone brings to the safety culture is a huge improvement over some of today's current practices. Let alone, what it actually captures for you in terms of data, and then being able to share that data internally throughout the company. Now, on the executive side, again, unless you're still climbing those piles, your interests are going to be a little bit different. And I think number one, this is a market where you've really got to keep innovating, keep staying up to date with the technology to survive. If you're not doing it, one of your competitors is. And with the drone, it is becoming a trend. It has become a trend in this industry. More and more companies in construction, in mining, in energy are utilizing the drone at different levels, yes, but almost all are today. And it's such a game-changing technology, which is the reason why. Now, equally as important to utilizing the technology is utilizing it for your specific business cases as well. So I think every executive might have different use cases in mind when I have that first initial conversation compared to when we get further into conversations and what they can actually see drones doing for their business. But there's so much, and I think big picture wise, it's just important for them to embrace this technology rather than to, keep doing the current ways of business that maybe they've been doing for the past 20, 30, 40 years.
Dan, I know you talk to people, sometimes they're completely new to the whole drone mapping world. Sometimes they've tried to build out their own solution and been unhappy with the results, or tried another competitor's solution and been unhappy. So just from your conversations, from your experience, why do you think our customers choose identified technologies over competitors or trying to build it out in-house?
Yeah, excellent question. Face this almost every day in the office. And it's very common, and just because a lot of companies are used to bringing operations in-house. And not that there's anything wrong to that, but it's a new technology, and we have a number, just actually a very significant number of customers today who maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 6 months ago, did attempt to bring a drone solution in-house, not realizing what a drone solution actually entails. Whether that have been the FAA relationship that needed developed, the airspace validation that comes along with each flight, the FAA certification, just the whole back end process of what goes into being, a certified pilot can be a little bit intimidating from the start. And the last thing anybody wants is the FAA knocking on your front door, or your company's name on the front page of the newspaper because you were flying uncertified or illegally, etc. So that's number one. Now, number two, drone data, it doesn't just magically turn into survey grade data. It doesn't just, you throw the photos into, some cheap processing software that you saw an ad for online, click go, and then next thing you know, you've got a, perfect topo, 1 foot contours, under a tenth in terms of accuracy. That's a fairy tale, my friends. That's an absolute fairy tale. There's a lot that goes into being able to deliver survey grade drone data. And that's why we have had success in this industry. That's why we have the partners that we do today. We see it as, hey, we're not going to intrude on your business. We're not going to try to compete with you for bids, buy equipment and perform construction. We know what we're good at. We know what you're good at. We truly see it as a partnership where we have the expertise, we have the in-house data processing software and skills to deliver survey grade data, and that's why our partnerships have been so successful in this industry.
You've talked a lot about where the industry is today. What do you think the future of drone mapping and the modern job site looks like, looking maybe 5 or 10 years out?
Yeah, so executives in the room, you're going to want to listen to this one. It's kind of funny. I'm looking at the screen. I see Barry's got drone expert by my name. We've been talking about drones all day. So I apologize. I might surprise you here, but the truth of the matter is the drone's the least important part of what we're looking at. It's just the survey grade data capture tool. It's simply, a toolkit that you keep on your job site in the back of your pickup truck and you use to collect data with. Where this industry is heading, what all the trends are showing us is it's all about the data. Yes, we now have a tool that can capture us faster data. We now have a tool that can capture us more frequent data. But if I can't use that data to my advantage, if I can't share it with the right people, if I can't reference that data over time, I'm not going to solve any of my problems. I'm just going to have a cool helicopter in the back of my pickup truck that I can take out and fly whenever I want. It really is, and we've seen it time and time again, the trends, everything's pointing to being able to utilize that data on the job site on a more frequent basis. And even things into now, how do I make my equipment more productive? How do I make my equipment more profitable? At the end of the day, if all your projects end up in the green, you're doing something right. And I think we've seen, and what we've been working with our existing customers is how do we now take this drone data that we're capturing on a more frequent basis, and how do I become more profitable with it in terms of equipment, in terms of workers, and on these different job sites.
All right, that takes us to the end of the hour. I want to be respectful of all our guest time, so if you do have questions that we didn't get to in this specific webinar, I'd invite you please go to our website, identifiedtech.com, and fill out the contact us form. We'll follow up with you and get you your answer. Even if we're not the right solution for you, we'll absolutely point you in the right direction so you can get what you need. And it's been a real pleasure talking to all of you. I appreciate you taking a chunk of your day to spend it with us. I want to thank Dan very much for sharing his expertise and wish everyone in the audience a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.